Imagine you're driving, standard American Main Street, but then you notice the cars, everyone a chrome-heavy relic from the 60s. You look at the diner on the corner, it's all neon orange and glass blocks, serving shakes in those sweating metal cups. You pull over and check your phone, but it feels like a piece of alien technology in a world that hasn't even invented the pocket calculator yet. These aren't movie sets. They're real American towns where the new never arrived. Sometimes it was a choice by a local rebel. Other times, it was a total economic collapse. And one of these spots, number 4, gave Pixar the literal blueprint for a billion-dollar franchise. If you've wondered where the old America went, this is where it's hiding. Town 1, Marfa, Texas. First up is Marfa. It's a tiny speck in the high desert of West Texas, maybe 2,000 people, and it feels like stepping into a 1965 Technicolor film. It kind of is a movie set, honestly. Back in '55, James Dean, Elizabeth Taylor, and Rock Hudson rolled into town to film Giant. They stayed at the Pisano Hotel, which, fair warning, still looks exactly like it did when Dean was leaning against the porch. But the vibe really shifted in the '70s because of Donald Judd. He was a New York artist who was just done with the city. He wanted somewhere untouched, and he found Marfa, this forgotten desert outpost that nobody had bothered to renovate since the Korean War. Judd didn't just move there, he started buying the town. Storefronts, military hangars, old houses. He turned them into massive art installations, but he had one strict rule: don't change the exterior. He wanted that frozen aesthetic. Today, you've got the Thunderbird Hotel, which is basically the platonic ideal of a 1965 motor lodge, and these weird, unexplained lights that dance in the desert at night. It's a bit like the Twilight Zone, but with better espresso and million-dollar art. It's a place where the 60s didn't die, they just became high-end. Town 2, Cle Elum, Washington. Now, Cle Elum is a different story. It didn't stay vintage because of some high-concept art project. It stayed vintage because, for a long time, the town was just too broke to change. It used to be a coal town, then a major pit stop on I-90. In the 60s, it was thriving with roadside Americana. But while every other town along the interstate was busy tearing down beautiful old brick and neon to put up glass and steel fast food joints, Cle Elum just sat there. The local businesses didn't have the capital to modernize, so they kept the old signs, the old counters, and the old ways. Funny enough, being behind the times became their biggest asset. Now, people drive 2 hours from Seattle just to sit at the counter of the Sunset Cafe or grab a loaf of torchetti from the Cle Elum Bakery. These aren't retro-themed businesses, they're the real deal. When you walk into the Iron Horse Inn, you aren't looking at a reproduction. You're looking at a room that hasn't seen a decorator since the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan. It's a reminder that sometimes, if you wait long enough, being outdated makes you the coolest person in the room. Town 3, Cairo, Illinois. I have to be honest, this next one is heavy. Not every time capsule is a fun trip down memory lane. Cairo, pronounced K-Ro, sits right where the Mississippi and Ohio rivers meet. In the 60s, it was a bustling port, but it was also a powder keg of racial tension. When the civil rights struggle hit Cairo, the town didn't just bend, it broke. There were protests, decade-long boycotts, and violence that made national news. White flight and economic collapse followed, and people didn't just move, they abandoned ship. If you walk through downtown Cairo today, it's eerie. You've got the Gem Theater and the Halliday Hotel, grand, beautiful buildings, just sitting there, rotting in real time. You can still see 1960s department store signs and old-fashioned street lamps through the weeds. It's not charming preservation. It's a ghost of a moment when a community lost its future and got trapped in its worst decade. It's a haunting look at the price of systemic failure. Town 4, Seligman, Arizona. Let's pivot to something a bit more hopeful. If you've seen the movie Cars, you know Radiator Springs. Well, that's Seligman. In September 1978, the interstate bypassed this town literally overnight. The traffic just vanished. Most towns would have folded and let the desert take them, but a barber named Angel Delgadillo decided he wasn't going anywhere. He turned his barber shop into a headquarters and spent years lobbying, fighting, and basically forcing the state to recognize Route 66 as a historic landmark. Seligman is the Mother Road in its purest form. You've got the snow-capped drive-in, where the jokes are as old as the shakes, and vintage cars lining the streets. It's loud, it's neon, and it's completely intentional. When the Pixar team was researching their movie, they sat in Angel's chair and listened to him talk about the day the music died when the highway opened. His life story is the soul of that movie. It proves that a town can survive being bypassed if it's got enough grit to stay exactly the way it is. Town 5, Beaufort, South Carolina. Beaufort is the smart version of preservation. In the 60s, they looked at their moss-draped oaks and antebellum houses and realized that new wasn't necessarily better. They passed some of the strictest preservation laws in the country, effectively locking the downtown in a visual vault. They didn't just save the 1800s, they saved the mid-century waterfront vibe that makes the South feel like a dream. Hollywood caught on pretty fast. Because the town is so perfectly preserved, it's been a stand-in for classic America for decades. If you've seen Forrest Gump or The Big Chill, you've seen these streets. The town realized that their outdated look was actually worth billions in tourism and film permits. They turned their history into a powerhouse economy. It's the proof that you can protect the past without living in a museum. You can live in a thriving, wealthy community that just happens to look like 1965. Town 6, Butte, Montana. Butte is complicated. At one point, this was the richest hill on Earth. Copper mining made it one of the largest cities in the West. By the 60s, the boom was fading, and by the 80s, the company town was dying. But because the city was built on such a massive scale, and because nobody had the money to tear anything down, the Uptown district stayed a perfect gritty snapshot of a mid-century mining hub. You can still visit the M&M cigar store. It's been there since 1930, and it feels like a union meeting could break out at any second. The department store windows still have that 60s layout, and the metals bank looks like a set from a heist movie. But there's a catch. Right next to this beautiful architecture is the Berkeley Pit, a massive, toxic lake left over from the mines. It's a weird, jarring contrast. You have this incredible historic human achievement sitting right on the edge of an environmental disaster. It's beautiful, it's industrial, and it's a little bit terrifying. Town 7, Williams, Arizona. This is the genius of Route 66. Williams is the perfect example of how to win at the preservation game. While other towns were dying because of the interstate, Williams fought the government in court for years. They actually managed to block the construction of I-40 through their land. Eventually, they made a deal. They'd allow the highway if the state gave them 3 dedicated exits and massive signage. On October 13, 1984, the highway finally opened. But they didn't mourn. They threw a massive party on the freeway. They hired Bobby Troup to play Get Your Kicks on Route 66 on a literal overpass. They branded themselves as the last town bypassed. And it worked. Today they get over 1 million tourists a year. They have the Grand Canyon Railway running vintage steam engines, and every soda fountain and neon sign is maintained with obsessive care. They took a death sentence and turned it into a superpower. Town 8, Thurmond, West Virginia. From 1 million tourists to exactly 5 residents. Thurmond is a railroad town that the world just moved past. Back in the day, it was so busy the local bank was one of the wealthiest in the state. But when coal transport shifted away from rail, the people left. Now, the National Park Service manages the empty buildings. It's not a tourist trap, it's just silent. There are no gift shops, no actors in costumes, just the tracks running through the center of town. Every now and then, a massive coal train screams through, shaking the windows of the empty buildings. But otherwise, it's a total vacuum. It's less of a town and more of a memorial to the American worker. Walking through it feels like you're trespassing on a memory. Town 9, Ocean City, Maryland. Let's end on a high note. The southern end of the Ocean City Boardwalk. This isn't preserved by law. It's preserved by pure, stubborn family tradition. You've got Trimper's rides, The carousel has been spinning since 1912, and some of the smaller rides are straight out of a 1960s carnival. Then there's Thrasher's Fries. If you ask for ketchup, they'll basically laugh at you. It's cider vinegar or nothing. It's been that way since 1929. It's the same families running the same stalls for generations. They don't change because their customers don't want them to. People who came here as kids in 1965 are now bringing their grandkids to the same popcorn stand. It's a rare slice of the 60s that feels joyful and loud rather than dusty and old. It's preservation through love. Town 10, Picher, Oklahoma. Finally, there's Picher. This is the end-of-the-world time capsule. Picher was a mining powerhouse. They provided the lead for the bullets that won both world wars. But that success literally poisoned the ground. By the 60s, kids were playing on mountains of toxic mining waste called chat piles, thinking they were just sand dunes. By the 2000s, the town was declared one of the most toxic Superfund sites in America. Then, a massive EF4 tornado hit in 2008. It leveled the town, and the government just said, "Don't rebuild, just go." They bought everyone out and told them to run. Now, it's a literal ghost town. You can see 1960s-era houses, old school buses, and storefronts slowly being swallowed by the weeds. It's the ultimate frozen town, but it's a warning. It shows what happens when we take too much from the land and don't look at the cost until the clock stops for good. 10 towns, 10 very different reasons why time stood still. Some are thriving tourist meccas, some are toxic nightmares, and some are just waiting for a train that's never coming back. It makes you wonder about your own neighborhood. What's actually worth keeping? What are we tearing down today that we're going to regret in 50 years? If you've ever been to one of these spots, or if you live in a town that feels like a time capsule, tell me the story in the comments. I actually read them. Stick around for the next one, and thanks for watching.